Hello, hello, everyone. Today is March 2nd, 2020. This is an edition of the SIG release engineering subproject meeting. This is a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to the Kubernetes code of conduct and overall just be awesome people. All right. So we've got a pretty light agenda today, and I figure we can use some of this time to go over the project board. First off, let's do introductions if there's anyone new on the call. I'm actually not seeing anyone new on the call, so if you haven't said hi before in this meeting and want to, go for it.
Hi, happy Monday, everybody.
Hey, Tim.
Since nobody else is saying hi.
Happy Monday, y'all.
Hey, Taylor. Happy Monday.
Happy
Glorious Monday to you.
Hope everybody had a good weekend.
Yeah, pretty good weekend, actually. Restful. Alrighty, so let me do a few things. I guess I will, why don't I share my screen? So we can go through this. So the first one, actually, let's do the CrelFF stuff first. So Jim said he is not going to be able to attend the call, but he's looking for someone to pair with on the Krell fast forward changes for SIG docs. So is anyone potentially interested in doing that?
Yeah, I can do that, yeah.
Is that you, Sasha?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, easy peasy. So the next one up is Golang updates. So pretty much every cycle or so, we talk about, or we do like a little scramble to do Golang updates, right? The process is not quite known outside of a few people. So what we decided to do this time was start writing everything down, right? So this is a tracking issue for the updates for Kubernetes 1.15 through 1.19. So essentially we're hitting everything from the release 1.15 branch up to the master branch, which will soon be the branch for 1.19. So the eventual goal is to close this issue, which is to draft a policy for updating Go versions across Kubernetes, right? So one of the things that we did during this update was worked on the kubectl container, right? So this, where is it? kubectl, boom. All right. So there's a separate issue open. So kubectl is one of the containers that we use to build Kubernetes. It lives in Kubernetes. And basically kubectl is the base for the build image that then, or we essentially do builds and releases within containers within some of the CI jobs. So these containers are the base for those jobs. So there are a few things to do. So what we wanted to do was essentially the Go update goes this way. You update a few things in Kubernetes, and you can see an example in this one. And because this is a patch release, this is a little easier. But we're getting ready to go into the 1.14.0 update, which will be a little stickier based on some of the comments I've gotten so far. But we have this cool file called build/dependencies.yaml, right? First thing you do here is bump the version in that, right? And from there, you can run a hack verify external dependencies within Kubernetes, right? And that will spit out a list of files that you have to update, right? Based on, if we look at this really quick, actually view the file. We have a set of dependencies, a name, a version for the dependency, and then reference paths, right? So a location for a file, as well as a regex match for that file, right? So the verify external dependencies script is basically going to look at this file and try to determine if the version is correct for if the version is correct for each of those files or each of those regex matches, right? So you can see that we're updating the Docker file, the version file, workspace, the Basel workspace, and then the make file, right? And if you look in this PR, you'll see that the Docker file, the version file, the workspace, updating the workspace, including so the registering tool chain, right? As well as updating the rules_go repo. And then the make file for test images, and then there's a bump in the sample API server as well, right? So that's kind of part of it. If you dig into this PR a little, you'll see that one of the next things that has to happen is one of the build admins, one of the owners for this directory, essentially has to assign it to a Googler, so Ben and Javier here, who are able to actually stage an image within staging-cates.gcri.io, and then an internal Google pull request to promote the image on their internal image promoter from GCRIO to Cates, from staging Cates to cates.gcri.io, right? So, so the process before this PR is complete, essentially what a Googler will do is clone the PR, build the image from that, push it to the staging repository, Google internal staging repository, then do the image promotion, right? So that means you really don't have full access to, one, it means we're dependent on Googlers for that. To a person who submits a PR to make a Golang change does not have full control over the entire life cycle of that process, right? So, so I was thinking, what if we tried to move it to Kubernetes infra, right? And how involved would that be? So there are a few things to do. So we did some search and replace stuff, right? So when we added a set of build image approvers and reviewers, Ben, Christoph, Dims, myself, and Linus from Google are, and you'll see there's some search and replace bits here, right, to the usgcri.io, Cates artifact prod / build image kubectl, right? So that is the location for that. This prefix is essentially where all of our prod images go, right? And then this folder is maps to the staging projects that we have within that are configured within the cates.io repo, right? So if we look at that real quick. Right. It's already in here. So you'll see there are a few things to do. Add an owner's alias, update some of the groups that had the group that has access, which is case infra staging, build image, right? So this last piece of the IAM group is basically what's used as that folder that we saw here, right? Okay. So we did a few things to allow this image to be tagged within, so certain build jobs will try to use this image locally. So it needs to be tagged as the prod registry, as well as being tagged with Kubernetes dash the current tag on the repo and whatever the kubectl version is. So cat.stat version file that we bump, and then tags the image with a few different tags. So that, the kubectl version, and then the prod registry as well, right? Then the push only pushes the staging registry tag in kubectl version. We've got a cloud build.yaml in here. All right. And minor updates to the makefile. So any questions on that so far? All right, cool. So the next piece of this was to do a little manual stuff. So basically the active versions of kubectl right now, 113.6, the previous active versions of kubectl were 113.6-1 and then 112.12-12, right? So before we could turn the images on for Kate's infra, we needed to promote the old ones, right? So I basically manually pulled them and then pushed them to the new registry. And then here we're taking the digests of the pushed images and tagging them appropriately, right? So this spits out the image promoter will eventually run. Bart, if you're still on the call, it runs on post submit, right?
Can you repeat the question?
The image promoter runs on post submit.
Yeah, as far as I know, yes.
Okay, right. I know there is a pull. I know there's a pull container image promoter test, and then if that succeeds, then once the PRs merge, it actually will run, right? So that's essentially what we did here. We just backfilled the old images so that the cutover in one PR, which is here. So again, it's just a bunch of searching and replacing and adding the cloud build.yaml in here and updating the makefile. But we wanted to make sure that we're not also bumping the version in this PR. So we had to backfill the image versions, right? And from there, we cherry picked these back to 117 and 116. And the 115 one, you'll see that it's a combination of a few things. One, the ability to actually point at the new registry. And then a Golang bump to 112.17, excuse me. So that's going to be the final bump that we do for the 115 branch before it goes out of support. And then all the usual stuff that I had showed you. All right. So I have another PR open, which is to discuss actually moving the kubectl image from from the over to K release, right? And the reason for this is that while we're building on Kubernetes infrastructure now for that image, it still requires like an intra PR dance where if someone who doesn't have access to the build image project opens the PR, they essentially, someone who has access to the build image project essentially has to clone the PR, do the push locally, and then do the promotion, right? If all the tests pass and yada, yada, yada. So what we did essentially was remove the requirement for that person to be a Googler out of the process, but we did not get the human out of the process, right? So the idea here is, so this is generally what the process is today, which will turn into a longer document. So you propose a PR with a Golang bump, trying to infer the location of where the cube cross image will be. You tweak it until all the tests pass. So basically, we're looking for test passes on everything but the pull Kubernetes cross image and the pull Kubernetes cross test and the pull Kubernetes verify test. And the reason for this is the cross test and the verify test use and expect the versions of kubectl. So if you bump them in the PR and they're not available yet, those tests will fail, right? So then you build the image locally from the PR, right? And this is the googly part, or the no longer googly part. Someone in the build images group can do that. You build the image locally, you push it to the K8s infra, create a PR for the image promotion, and then retest the open PR once the image is promoted. So what I'm thinking of instead is you propose, so this is pretty much a copy and paste of, of the stuff that's in build image cross in Kubernetes and moved over to images build cross in Kubernetes release. So the idea for the process would be you propose a PR to K release to update the Golang version. If everything looks good, you merge the PR, which triggers a post submit. And then we would have canary versions of the cross and verify jobs that would run against the new staging image. If those passed, then we would promote that image. Then we can propose a PR for Kubernetes that does the Golang pump. This time the image already exists, so whoever is opening the PR no longer has to do that dance between them and the people who have access to actually push the image, right? And then hopefully success, right? So any thoughts on that? And maybe specifically from Tim.
Sounds like a promotion process. I guess I'm like, I'm not going to get caught up on any of the particular details too much. I think it's the pattern we want in the big picture.
Okay. Cool. So I will continue pushing on that. So the idea is that eventually we'll move the ownership from just this build images group, which is kind of like 5 people right now. Ben, Christoph, Dims, myself, and Linus at Google into the release engineering group, right? So ideally that would start with release managers, and then as people get this down, kind of open, well, not open the floodgates, but expand the group of people who can manage this. The reason they wanted to start small is this is one of the more important images that exists in Kubernetes. A lot of the tests are dependent on it, as well as if you look at the K8s Cloud Builder image, which we maintain on the Kubernetes release side. That image is based on kubectl, right? So the image that we use to build, stage, and release Kubernetes is based on kubectl. So very important image. So once we document policies for update and go, that will include some chatter about updating, maintaining kubectl. And at that point, we can start tweaking the amount of people who have access to that group. You can see there's also a test infra PR open to enable the build, building and pushing. So targets the image build cross directory and the staging build image project will inform on a few different dashboards, RelEng informing, master informing, and image pushes, and runs in the test infra trusted cluster, right? So basically this job will run on master branch if this directory is changed, right? Okay, so any questions on that? All right, so the next steps here are really, there's some publishing bot Go versions to bump. I did the version bumps for the Kate's Cloud Builder image that I was referring to. So basically, we're just making sure that added a hair, a skosh more stuff to Anago, just for the sake of pointing. So basically, Anago is looking for, it has like a GCRI, GCRIO path prod location that the image was pointing at before. And now that it's moved away from that location, we're just capturing a few variables for that. And then really just search and replace versions. And then the new images for Cloud Builder have been updated. So both for 1.12.17 and 1.13.8. So, all right. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Cool. So any questions before we move into, I don't know, what should we move into next? We'll do release manager updates. How about that? All right, everyone's excited. Woo! Yeah! All right, how about we start with Sasha? You want to talk a little bit about what you've been working on? I know you've been doing a bunch of stuff.
Oh yeah, I was working on fixing bugs related to release engineering tooling and changelog generation. So I think we are all set now, so this should work also for the upcoming releases. And then I'm looking forward to support docs. I think so.
Cool, cool, awesome. So I think that stuff has settled down enough that we can look at, well, rather, it's a question, it's an ask. Can you jump back into the changelog integration tests PR and make sure that's updated? I think we want to merge that one next.
I think it's up to date. I think the last status was that Hannes would have a look into it, but I'm not sure if he's around.
Okay, okay. All right, so I'll take a peek at that. I wasn't sure if it fell out of date because of some of the recent changes.
Yeah.
Nice mug, Tim. All right. So Tim, you want to go next?
Yeah, the main thing that I've been doing is just trying to stay on top of patches for next week's patch releases and doing minimal bits of review of things going by. So not a whole lot of exciting, just cranking the crank.
So one thing to note on the patch release side is the schedule that we chose this time. What I kind of was thinking there was, one, let's make sure that it doesn't bleed into a weekend, right? So people aren't rushing on on a Friday or something, and there's no expectation of the patch release team to be reviewing patches between the Friday and whatever the date is set to be for the actual release, whether it be that Tuesday or Wednesday. So that was, I think we shifted it over to Monday for the cherry pick deadline. So I think, the 9th is the cherry pick deadline. And then Thursday is the patch release.
Yep.
Or
There's kind of two windows. I think the way we've typically done it is have things due by Friday, and we're not reviewing things on the weekend. CI is just soaking on the weekend, and that's it. But often that means then that we're looking to release on a Tuesday, and Tuesday is also when there's other related work often going on within the release team. And because of that conflict, it makes sense to have a little bit of a spread. So having things due on Monday, having them soak for a couple days, releasing on a Thursday is kind of the only other option to fit things in the weekend.
yeah,
You could do a Tuesday, Friday, but then that runs a little bit more risk of issues bleeding into a weekend again if we don't succeed on the release.
yeah. So I didn't choose the Friday because if we want to try to do a follow the sunny kind of thing, the patch release team members that are already in further time zones are going to be out for the weekend.
Yep. And then there's also downstream consumers, like the people who are consuming things kind of dislike getting a release on Friday, because then they're like, oh crap, I gotta try and
Do I have to do a thing?
consume this.
Yeah.
People
Yeah,
have
yeah.
SLAs. They're when a release comes out, they're expected to do something within 2 days sometimes, especially if there's a CVE, for example. There's stuff to do. So if Friday evening or after the close of business in their time zone, they're hearing there's a new release, then they're potentially getting pager dutied in to evaluate the release and what they should do. And if there's a CVE, then they're rolling it out on the weekend, and that's not nice. So doing it earlier in the week is nicer for the consumers.
For sure. And as Tim mentioned, we want to make sure that we don't have these. I think initially we were releasing on several different days, and then we kind of bundle them all into one day. But that was in addition to the work that happens on the release team, right? So we were letting out like a pre-release plus a set of patch releases. So the pre-release for next week is on the 10th, that Tuesday, and then we're giving it a bit of a gap. I figure this is a good gap for if there's anything that goes wonky with the tools, because that happens occasionally. That we have we have a few days to clean anything up that we need to before we actually cut the patch releases. Cool. All right, Carlos, you want to go next?
Yeah, what do I need to say?
Tell us what you've been up to on the release engineering.
Yeah, okay. I was not following the agenda. Okay, mainly doing the branch forward, fast forward, and I did some help with Sasha to fix some issues that we found in the branch fast forward. Was like very small issues, just some details. And for now, I need to talk with you and the team and Sasha to give some access to Daniel for the next cut. We are talking about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the idea. I think Daniel is in the call as well, right?
Yeah, I see him.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, since you didn't cut the previous one, we had some issues. Then the idea is give you the next cut, the opportunity to cut this release.
Awesome. Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can, if you can, Daniel or Carlos or Sasha, can you open the issue for, what is it, Release Manager onboarding?
Yeah, I can do that.
Again?
This is on the SIG release, right?
The SIG release repo, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
I'll do
And
that.
then also make sure that the 1.18.0 beta 2 issue is open. And so Daniel, you can open that one.
Yeah, I have everything in my backlog here.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Taylor, what's you been up to?
Yo, what's shaking, everyone? Happy Monday. I have been working with the 1.18 release team. I've been learning to read all the tea leaves, so to speak, with just kind of test infra and what is it? I can't remember the red color, but just
That's great.
I don't know what the Pantone color is, but it's red. But taking a look at that, working with the team, and just kind of unraveling the whole release process. And on the side, I've been kind of working on my Go skills. I've got wonderful accountability buddy, Jim. He is an angel, and he's been helping me out with that, kind of keeping me accountable. So working through that so I can kind of step in and work a little bit more with y'all on some of these release tools and things of that nature. But yeah, once 1.18 is out the door, I should be coming back in full force and be able to help out on a lot of stuff that we're working on to be successful. Got to keep the fun alive, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks for the update, Taylor. All right, let's see. Any other release managers? I guess me. Yeah, I guess I'm the last one here. All right. So the KubeCross stuff that we've been that I've walked you through before. I've been working on the Go bumps. The next one is 1.14.0, which is going to be trickier because of some changes that they've made upstream. I'm going to try to circle back to kubepkg and wrap up the RPM section of that. Right now it only does debs, and that is not great. So kubepkg, for people on the call who are not aware, is a tool that we built to allow you to build or package debs and RPMs of the Kubernetes control components, right? So the client and server components. What else has been going on? Yeah, so some of the test infra work to clean up some of our jobs, that's not entirely complete, although some of it's been fixed by the fact that the 1.14 branch went away. So we had some Basel failures on the 1.14 branch that no longer exist because that branch, those jobs no longer exist. There was an issue opened around removing Basel from everything. And some of the release managers have volunteered to help out with that. We don't exactly know what the shape of that is going to be. And I imagine this will be a joint effort between SIG release and testing, but just wanted to make you aware of that. Here is just popping that issue in the chat if you want to check it out. And yeah, what else? Yeah, I guess some of the infra stuff around the staging and release process, GCB Manager work that I referred to last meeting. That is, I think I have to do a few tweaks on the release flow, but that is mostly good to go. So soon I'm going to deprecate the GCB Manager. Or essentially, if you run GCB Manager, it will tell you, hey, did you know Krell GCB Manager existed? You should go use that instead. There are a few things that Krell GCB Manager does not do yet. which is listing jobs, which I'm not sure that many of us were doing anyway. So each of the jobs spit out a build ID, and the people who have access to GCB are able to pull up those build IDs anyway. So I kind of deemed it to be non-essential work for the time being. But Tim, I can't tell if you had thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's an area that we should maybe even think about opening an issue to track longer term, how we enable debugging. So for example, with the Anago failures that we had kind of December, January, I was trying to go through and find like, okay, so this is weird in this scenario, but where did we do it last cycle? And a UUID is kind of opaque. So I'm like, I'm looking for which UUID matches with last quarter's beta 1, beta 2. Let me get at those logs quickly. So like I would like some sort of a table mappy thing so I could say like, hand me all the recent logs from beta builds so I can compare. Hand me, and right now the lister, like it'll list, is it 4 or 6? It's just like hard coded.
5. It lists 5, but the way that the list gets output is usually like garbled.
It's so I bet if I pulled up my branch right now, my branch would be dirty because I've changed that 5 to a 45 or something like that, because I've been having to go back and try and hunt out UUIDs, and then I dump the log for a given UUID to a file, and I grep and search, and I build my own little table and then start looking at the relevant things. And the web version of this doesn't make it easier either, but I think as we get more and more automated, we're gonna pay attention to these things less and less day to day, and then debugging is going to be a very emergent situation because we're not going to be used to looking at the things or finding relevant stuff in them. So we're going to want something eventually in that space.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I mean, the idea that I had was, so if you look at the Go mod outdated output, right, that gives you, so that runs during the compile release tools process. That gives you like a pretty table, right, that we can use. That's not the super important part. I think the more important part will be to start leveraging the tags that we put on the releases, right? So the release is tagged by the user, the GCB user, the release type, whether it's a stage or release, the version. I want to start shoving more data into that, like the git SHA that's used, the if it's targeted against a non-standard tools org or repo or a branch, stuff like that, right? And then I think that the search functionality that we could have there can be based on searching by tags, right? Later, Carlos.
Yeah, ultimately the tags are going to be our first order pathways, I think, into it. Eventually having that spit out a UUID so you can dump the full log of that thing probably makes a lot of sense, but that's not the starting point. And the only reason it was a starting point now was that you would start a job, it would spit that out, and you would tail it if you wanted to. So that's not something that humans are gonna speak.
Yes, 021CDE.
I was thinking it was AFB3721 that we were interested in. Does anybody remember?
Surely it's E240. Yeah, no, it is definitely difficult to track. So I think by hitting the tags and trying to decide if the tags that we use today are useful, right? Because the ones that we use today are essentially just the ones that were there when we picked up these tools, right? So tagging something, whether it's a pre-release, the release that it's intending to stage or release. We should open up an issue. Can you put that in the notes, or if you want to open the issue yourself, go crazy. All right. So I think with the I think with the 15 minutes or the 18 minutes that we have left, We can do some project board review. But before we do that, does anyone have topics that they want to go over? Last call, super serious last call for topics this time. All right, take it easy, Bart. All right, okay, we're gonna do the project board. So Tim and I were chatting about it, and we think what we'll do is try to make the that little release manager's update part of the call more officially. Do that more frequently so that we kind of feel what I mean, like we're a team, but we're all remote, and it's good to just do. I guess we'd call that a stand-up. Do a quick stand-up just to see what all the release managers are up to. Definitely helpful for people who are not on the within the release managers group if you want to pair on certain pieces of work or just learn about what someone's been doing. You can do that. So sharing screen, and here we go. Oh, I realize now why I've never done this on a call. It is quite a bit of a board. All right, so, and they're moving. Okay, all right.
It's the dynamic web.
I'm pretty sure when the issues are exposed to light, they tend to move.
This is for sure Firefox. Yeah. That was totally a Diablo stat sheet, if anyone saw a glimpse of that really quick. So
+1.
All right. So the first thing I usually like to do is go through and make sure that issues that are tagged for us actually land in our repo. Sorry, tagged with release engineering actually land in the release engineering project. This one I looked at, it is review in progress. Come on. GitHub, why? Okay. This is going great. And then you just hover for a while until it figures out that it should be in the column that you're hovering over. I did review this. Okay. I think I'm going to do that off the call because that's going pretty slowly. So let's do. Okay, is PR. Do we have active stuff open? All right, so etcd Debian bump. This is a simple bump. This I LGTM'd this earlier. GC container D. Is this the? Okay, Dan, this is yours. Did you have a chance to update this one yet?
I have not yet, but it should be done shortly.
Okay, cool. So basically, what Dan's doing is pulling pulling the GCWindows 2019 Container Deep Master test off of release informing, and the updates of the PR will be moving it over to, I think, the GCWindows or something directory where they, Windows gc.yaml file where they store the rest of those GCWindows tests. That test has been pretty frequently flaking, so that's the reason that we're pulling that off. I think it was a work in progress that was still a work in progress, so that should not be on informing right now. All right, moving conformance image to Debian stretch. So DIMS is working on, well, what the title said, moving the conformance image to Debian stretch. This is related to something. It's related to a different PR that is open. Super lovely description. Essentially what we're doing here is there was some analysis done by Tim Allclear on this PR for cleaning up the image building for Debian images. So that's Debian base, Debian hypercube base, and Debian IP tables, the images that we manage. Again, they suffer from a similar issue where only certain people can build and push those images or promote those images, and those people are Googlers. So this PR was essentially created to start moving down the path of image building for those base images. These are the base images that key components, API server, controller manager, what have you, are built on top of kube proxy, scheduler, all that good stuff. So Hannes was doing a bit of analysis on these images, and so all the fun details are captured in some of these details blobs. But where we got to was saying, what if we just abandon the images altogether and use the upstream Debian Slim, because they patch more frequently than we do. We don't have to essentially maintain that piece of the image lifecycle, because to be quite frank, we're not doing that today. We as a project, not we as release engineering. So yeah, so I opened up kind of a work in progress PR that was like, hey, let's just remove this. So this literally is a delete, and I'm going to play whack-a-mole with the tests essentially. But one of the ones that DIMS is working on is pulling that out of the conformance image. So it was using hypercube base, probably didn't need to use hypercube base for this one. But this should actually have a version. I wonder if there's a version. I got to re-review that. Okay. All right. Back to the board. Okay, so add support for arbitrary Go templating when generating Markdown. The submitter for this PR added some updates today that I haven't had a chance to review just yet. But essentially, this is some updates to the release notes test. Looks like Joe or John is a contributor for your fave CLI, and they're considering using our tool, our release notes tooling for their project as well, which is really, really cool. So this PR, it adds some additional functionality around templating and rendering the downloads table, and hopefully we have it in soon. Fix Basel version markers. This Okay, now that the 114 branch is gone, I can come back to this one. I need to rebase this. Essentially what we're doing is moving around, one, making sure that test infra on call gets hit for these Basel jobs, and then also making sure that they fixing some of these version markers up. But the real question that I'm going to ask now is, do we need these jobs, right? If we're going to move away from Basel, like what if we just deleted the jobs? So TBD. This one has been lingering for a while, and it is my fault. Essentially, so the dependencies.yaml that I was referring to before, essentially the idea here was to move dependencies.yaml into a build external dependencies or some such directory where we could give multiple SIG reviewer approvers, not just within release, access to update these dependencies. So say we carved this out and it became build external, I don't know, etcd or something, right? And then the etcd approvers, so on and so forth, right? And then modify the existing script to walk through each of those directories, right? And try to do the correct thing, right? See if the versions are up to date there. So before we can do this, we essentially have to draft a policy of how it's all very cyclical, right? Before we do this, we have to draft a policy of how someone would update a dependency. And before we draft that policy, we have to understand how to do the updates ourselves. So this comes back to doing the Golang update at the beginning of the call. So I want to understand very deeply all the little steps that are involved. And if you remember the list, they're quite, it's a bit involved, right? So I want to make sure that this is like succinctly documented, at least for the Go case, and then use that as the basis for the other cases, right? There are some similarities in the way that we would update the external dependencies to the way that we would update Go. So once that's documented, then we can generalize that policy for other external dependencies, and hopefully merge that PR, right? Update it and merge it once that policy is in place. Right. So I think, all right, there's an HBA E to E. Do we have anyone on the call from CI Signal, by any chance?
I'm on CI Signal.
Okay. Do we know if anyone ever followed up on this one?
I am not sure on that one, but I can look into it following this meeting.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so essentially someone proposed adding the HBA tests to the master blocking the dashboards, but it was not discussed with SIG release. So the idea was that this PR be held until they put forth a proposal. I haven't heard anything back or seen any chatter on this. It's been since November. So I'll leave CI Signal to follow up on that.
Sounds good.
And if we're going to introduce it, we should probably introduce it as master informing first. All right, we are 4 minutes to time, and I doubt we're going to get through this stuff. So we're going to call it on the board. Was that entertaining? Was it useful to people?
It was for me. I do have a question though.
Yes, awesome questions.
In regards to the Go updates and doing the documentation, I know at least I don't recall that anybody jumped to do that, and I would be interested in doing that if somebody wanted to pair.
You can shadow me. The reason I've been doing most of that stuff is I want to make sure that I know all of the puzzle pieces before I turn anyone else loose on it, but we can work on it together. Yeah.
Awesome, cool. I'll sync with you offline maybe later today.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sweet.
Yeah. All right. So, is there anything in the format you would like to see? We're constantly looking for ways that we can improve the meeting. So, um, did so Taylor says he liked it, and it was useful. But yeah, if there are things you'd like to hear us do, more demos, I don't know. Let me know. All right, cool. Awesome, awesome. All right, so more PR reviews and more deep dives, and we'll maybe try to get the demos back on the schedule where we'll pick a chunk of code and just stare at it for a while. I think that would be pretty cool for like the change log that that Sasha and folks have been working on, and other portions of Krell that we've been refactoring lately. Yeah, we can do that. We can for sure do that. All right. Well, it has been a pleasure, everyone, as it always is. Happy Monday. I will probably see you later today. Later.
Have a good day, all. Evening, night, wherever.